Imagine a silent operating room. A neurosurgeon stimulates a small area of the brain of an awake patient with a probe, and suddenly that man vividly recalls the smell of bread in his grandmother's kitchen, a scene from 40 years earlier. Just a few millimeters away, and the memory slips back into shadow. For more than a century, neuroscience has observed phenomena like this and interpreted them in very concrete terms. Memory, it is said, is written in neurons, in synapses, in the chemical changes that connect nerve cells to one another. And yet, despite thousands of experiments, no one has ever been able to point and say, here, precisely here, is the memory of that day, that phrase, that person. It is in this space of open questions that Federico Fagin's idea takes form. Fagin, a physicist and inventor who played a key role in the creation of the microprocessor, one of the inventions that reshaped the digital world. He, who spent his life working with electronic information, dared to put forward a radical proposal. Memory is not contained in the brain, but in space. In this view, the brain is not the archive but the reader. It is not the hard drive, but the modem. It doesn't store contents, it grants access to them. To grasp the scope of this intuition, we must start from Fagin's concept of consciousness. In today's dominant view, consciousness is seen as an emergent product of brain activity. Many neurons interacting until, at some point, subjective experience pops out. Fagin overturns this. Consciousness is not a byproduct of matter. It is a fundamental quality of reality, as basic as space, time, or energy. If consciousness is primary, then it must be able to exist without depending absolutely on a biological support. From this perspective, memory becomes a function of consciousness, not of flesh. What we call a memory would not be a file written into neurons, but information present in a broader field, a field that passes through and contains us. The brain would then be the interface, the device that allows consciousness to access that information and transform it into mental images, emotions, and narratives. To make this idea intuitive, we can use a modern analogy. Think of your computer or smartphone. Much of what you use every day, photos, documents, videos, is not physically stored in the device, but in the so-called cloud, a network of servers scattered across the world. The device is not the warehouse of data, but the terminal that recalls them when needed. In Fagin's view, personal memory works similarly. Space is the cosmic cloud of information, while the brain is the terminal through which consciousness accesses what has been recorded. This, however, requires a profound change of paradigm. We must stop thinking of space as a passive void. In classical physics, space is a neutral container within which matter moves. But modern physics has already cracked that image. The spacetime of general relativity is a fabric that can curve, deform, and carry energy in the form of gravitational waves. Quantum fields, according to quantum theory, fill the vacuum. Even when there is nothing, there are fluctuations, potentials, states that can actualize. Fagin pushes this picture one step further, imagining space as an informational field capable of recording the acts of consciousness. Each time we experience something, a joy, a pain, an intuition, that experience is inscribed in the weave of this field, not as a cold number but as meaningful information. Consciousness does not merely record data, it interprets, selects, and attributes value. Meaning is what makes a memory alive. What distinguishes it from a simple sequence of electrical impulses? In this framework, attention becomes the dial with which we regulate our connection to the informational field. When we are fully present, absorbed in something that truly matters to us, it is as if the signal were strong. What we experience imprints itself deeply in the informational space. When we act absent-mindedly, the signal is weak, the imprint faint. This is not just a metaphor. It explains why we remember emotionally intense moments with such clarity and forget entire days of routine. We might picture the mechanism this way. Space is like an invisible transparent page on which consciousness is constantly writing. The brain is the beam of light that illuminates different parts of that page from time to time. Where the light is intense, that is, where attention focuses and emotion is strong, the words stand out sharply. Where the light is weak, the traces are almost invisible. When, years later, a scent, a piece of music, or a place awakens a memory, in Fagin's view it is not the brain that finds something lost in a drawer, but consciousness retuning itself to that region of informational space where the memory was written. The analogy of the antenna goes further. The brain is an antenna that can tune itself to specific frequencies of the informational field. Attention regulates the tuning. When we dream, when we imagine, when a sudden idea arrives, we might not be inventing, from nothing, but recombining in new ways information available in space, accessing different pages of a library that constantly surrounds us. So far, this remains abstract, a space that is not empty, an informational field, a consciousness that writes and reads. But Fagin goes further and asks, if memory is not in the brain, then it must be stored somewhere. Is there a component of the universe stable and invisible enough to preserve information without decaying like ordinary matter? At this point, an enigmatic protagonist of modern cosmology enters the scene: dark matter. According to astrophysical observations, most of the mass of the universe is not made of matter we know, atoms, stars, planets, gas, but of something we cannot see directly: dark matter. It emits no light, reflects no electromagnetic radiation, and interacts with ordinary matter only through gravity. Yet we perceive its presence in the motion of galaxies, the distribution of large-scale cosmic structures, and the way light bends around their invisible mass. It is as if the universe were wrapped in an immense skeleton of matter we cannot touch, but which holds cosmic structures together. For Fagin, such a diffuse, stable, and elusive component is a natural candidate to host the information linked to consciousness. Not because there is already experimental proof of this, and he himself does not claim that, but because, if we seek a non-material support, something omnipresent and resistant to decay unlike biological tissue, the hidden side of the universe becomes the first logical suspect. His hypothesis is bold. The same invisible substrate that structures the cosmos might also be the place where the memory of conscious experiences is recorded. At this point, one question becomes inevitable: what happens to memory when the body dies? In the classical view, the answer is brutal and linear. If memories are in the synapses, and the synapses disintegrate, memory dies with the brain, just as a file stored on a hard drive is lost when the disk is destroyed. But if memory resides in informational space, if it is written in a field independent of biological support, then the death of the body cannot erase that information. It can only close the access the brain once provided. From this perspective, the body is the temporary interface consciousness uses to experience the physical world. As long as the interface functions, consciousness can read and write in its page of informational space. When the body ceases to function, the interface turns off, but the page is not torn away. It remains where it was, with everything written during a lifetime. Memory, then, is not the property of the brain, but of consciousness itself. If consciousness continues to exist in a form independent of the body, memory too continues, as living information woven into the fabric of existence. Fagin does not present this as a revealed truth, nor as a new religion disguised as science, but as the logical consequence of one assumption: consciousness is fundamental. If that is so, it must be able to possess and preserve information. If the information is not in the brain, it must exist elsewhere. If it exists elsewhere, it does not depend on the body. And if it does not depend on the body, it does not die with it. From here arises another evocative idea. Each consciousness has its own informational signature. We would not access a single collective memory in which all experiences blend, but a set of memories tied to our unique way of perceiving, interpreting, and giving meaning. This signature is like a personal key that consciousness builds throughout life. It is what makes us individuals, what lets us recognize memories as ours. It prevents memory from becoming an anonymous sea where identities dissolve. When the body dies, according to this hypothesis, the informational signature does not disappear. It remains associated with all that consciousness has lived, loved, feared, understood. It is not a brain preserved forever, not an organism surviving in some ethereal realm, but a non-material conscious memory that continues to exist within the informational structure of the universe. It is a new way of speaking about the continuity of being, using language that strives to remain rational while moving at the boundary between physics, philosophy, and metaphysics. In this framework, remembering has never been a purely mechanical act. It is the activation of a bridge between consciousness and the informational field where memory is written. The body participates in this process, making it possible in the physical world, but it does not exhaust it. When the biological intermediary shuts down, the bridge is not necessarily destroyed, it changes form, mode of operation, but the information it was linked to continues to exist. If we take this vision seriously, even the meaning of daily life changes. Every choice, every relationship, every act of courage or selfishness, every spiritual or scientific intuition stops being a fleeting event destined to vanish into nothingness. It becomes a real inscription in the fabric of the universe. What we live does not slip away, it leaves a trace in a space untouched by the wear of flesh. This does not remove the mystery of death, but it softens its character of definitive annihilation. What we have learned, transformed, understood would not be erased, but would remain available in the informational dimension where it already resided while we were alive. Of course, from the standpoint of mainstream science, all of this is highly speculative. Today we lack tools capable of measuring an informational field of consciousness, let alone linking memory directly to a possible structure related to dark matter. Neuroscience continues to gather vast amounts of data connecting brain activity and psychological phenomena, and Fagan does not deny any of this. The brain remains essential for embodied conscious experience. What is questioned is merely the idea that it is the sole source and sole archive of what we are. The value of this hypothesis, then, does not lie in offering a definitive answer, but in providing a new map with which to explore ancient questions. What is consciousness, really? Where does what we have lived go? Why do certain experiences seem more real and enduring than any material object? To think of memory as a cosmic imprint, as writing in space, means to open a vision in which our inner life is not a local phenomenon enclosed within the skull, but a process that involves the entire structure of existence. Ultimately, Fagan's proposal asks us only to grant a possibility. That space is not empty, that consciousness is not an accidental product of matter, and that memory is not reducible to a chemical variation in tissue that will eventually decay. Even if only part of this vision were close to the truth, then what we call I would be far more than a brief flash between two nothings. It would be a conscious center writing its own story in a universe capable of remembering. And every moment of our existence, even the smallest and quietest, would be a sentence in that immense story that continues to live on in space, even after the body that wrote it has finished its role on the stage. If you have read this far, it means you love curiosity as much as we do. If you enjoyed this journey, leave a like, write a comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to support what we do. Your presence truly makes a difference. Until the next exploration.